It's Bigfoot Collectors Club with Bryce and Michael. I know a ghost story or two.
You can let it affect you. It's okay.
Yeah, you don't have to be so far away from the microphone. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Bigfoot Collectors Club. I'm your host. Oh, it's the podcast where we interview celebrity guests about their paranormal history and tell stories of high strangeness. I'm your host, Michael McMillian. With me always is your other host.
Hey, I'm Bryce Johnson.
And your producer,
Riley Bray.
Hi, guys.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, before we get started with the show and bring in our guest, who you heard a little trill of laughter.
Guess who that is?
I want to do some Patreon shout-outs.
Yay.
As you know, we recently launched our Patreon campaign. Thank you, everybody who's gone over there and subscribed and patronized us. This week, I'd like to specifically shout out Donovan Kaler, Amanda Chung, Grace Mitchell, Danielle Urbank, and Jim Gangloff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thank you so much. We have 2 bonus episodes up there already, plus an outtake from last week's episode with Scott Adsit. That one's been keeping me up at night.
Oh, man.
I almost quit the podcast. If you'd like to join the fun over there, go to www.patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub to subscribe. That's it for business. Let's start the show. With us today is she's pulling the mic towards her face.
Sat up straight.
Yeah.
No one's looking.
She's a very good friend of mine. She's a very talented and very funny actor and director. You've seen her on Glow. You may have seen her or listened to her sing as part of the threesome the Apple Sisters.
Cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Kimmy Gatewood.
Yeah.
Hi.
How's it going?
My posture is better, which I'm very proud.
I like your dress
Yeah,
you're
she's
wearing
wearing this
today.
lovely dress. Yes.
I'm wearing some metallic blue
Ooh.
shoes.
Yeah.
And
She's bringing
a cheetah dress?
Yeah, it's a little cheetah print. It's
an
nice.
albino cheetah, maybe.
Yeah.
I gotta say,
Which
it
is
is
rare.
so nice to have a woman back in the clubhouse.
Truly.
Because
Yeah.
we've had about 3 episodes in a row.
A lot of dudes.
A lot
Smells
of
like
dudes.
bananas and
Sorry.
sweat in here.
Sorry. We know what that is.
We discovered mushed up banana at the bottom of
I know.
Bryce's backpack.
I was like, what the hell? I reached in to get my notes, and
That's
it was
my new
just...
vocal warm up.
It was,
Mushed up bananas at the bottom of Bryce's backpack.
it was an evening
bottom of Bryce's
night. Yeah, I was just mushing there, and I immediately threw my wife under the bus. I was like, fucking bitch.
No, you did not say that.
No, I didn't.
That was the joke of what you
I
said.
know. You're right.
That she was being a thoughtful, wonderful
Yeah,
person.
she was.
Cursing her name.
I know. It's my
You
fault.
said, I didn't do this, my wife did.
I think that's like so much part of my problem. Was I'm so quick to just...
How long
Find someone else to
Yes,
blame.
I'm a blame gamer for sure.
You're a real banana blamer.
I'm
is
a
what
real
you are.
banana blamer.
Where? How long has that banana been in that backpack?
Just
Scooter?
today.
Oh,
Just today.
just today?
Out
Oh,
of- yeah.
jeez.
I know. Yeah. Oh, well.
How was everybody's weekend?
It was good. It was great.
I have a confession to make, Bryce.
Okay.
Riley and I hung out yesterday
Oh,
without you.
Oh, we did. Oh, I'm so hurt.
Well,
It's because you're
I'm
hurt.
so
It's
glad
actually-
I'm here for the gossip.
it's actually because you are hurt. Wait, your cast is off.
Yeah, I'm. My cast is off, but it's still a little swollen, and I'm taking some rehab, and
Okay.
I'm getting closer to.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Now I'm going to
You're
feel
still
like
not
a real
cool enough
asshole.
to hang
still,
out.
Yeah, you're still not cool enough to hang out.
No, well, so
What's up,
remember,
Shit.
remember a few weeks ago I said that I went with my family to downtown Disney to the Void Star Wars VR experience
yeah.
where you
Can't
get to
wait to do that.
Holy shit.
Oh,
okay,
you guys did
so
that, huh?
listen,
Yeah.
they have a pop-up at Glendale
Wow.
Galleria. And I'd been telling another separate group of friends who are not on a podcast with me about it. And 4 of us were like, let's all go. And then 2 of them dropped out. Now, you would think I could find 2 replacements from this podcast. But I thought, well, Bryce can't do it with his foot.
I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah, so I didn't, because you're wearing like VR back.
Yeah.
You're running
You can't
around
hold-
a
you can't-
maze.
You can't
Are
shoot a
you
blaster with
okay?
crutches.
Yeah, I could have been
I feel like you're not taking this well.
So anyway, we went to the Glendale Galleria one yesterday.
The explaining is not helping.
No, I know. It was
Where's
so
my squishy
fun.
banana? I'm gonna-
It
It's getting
was the
worse.
best time ever.
Throw my banana at your face right now.
Riley,
we got
what did you
Froyo.
think about your first VR experience?
I loved it. I was so into it. It was amazing. It was funny how it at first there's a part where you walk out onto like a little platform and there's lava everywhere.
I mean, it's all.
I was so careful. I was like, don't fall in
Wow,
the
it's like a
lava.
kid again,
Don't
the
fall
lava.
off the
Yes.
platform. Like and it's like, okay, that's not real. I'm in the mall, but I'm like, oh, there's lava.
There's a teenager just out of your reach, like checking his cell phone.
Right.
Fully, like not but 5 minutes ago, so that dude's like, all right, man, just like put on your helmet and like
Everyone, of course, everyone's like, well, you're the tallest stormtrooper that's ever
Yeah.
existed.
a lot of tall stormtrooper jokes.
I mean, including me. Although I said,
Fair.
we wish you could be a Wookiee. You'd be a good
That would have been
Wookiee.
awesome. There should have been an above 6'5", you get skinned as a Wookiee.
Oh, that'd be
in the VR.
sweet. That's amazing.
It was really fun. I highly recommend checking it out. Now, Void, if you're listening, please be a sponsor of this podcast because
No
I
affiliation.
wholeheartedly endorse this. However, I will say to those of you who haven't done it, including Kimmy and Bryce in this room, I would recommend doing the one at Downtown Disney just because the lead into the what's inside the maze and the virtual. So basically, for people who don't know, you put on a vest that can feel shocks, like when you get shot by stormtroopers.
Oh, God.
And you I mean, they're very light. It's like your phone vibrating. It's not that bad.
Or just a vibrator.
Yeah, yes, or a vibrator.
It's a good time.
I know afterwards I turned to Riley. I was like, I wish they did ultra-violent mode where you actually got electrocuted.
Little tasers.
Yeah.
It's coming.
But
It's coming.
basically, you put on these goggles and you're walking through a physical map, but there's an overlay of the virtual world in it, so you can move around. When you reach out you can like press buttons that are.
Oh,
you
that's
see,
so
it's
cool.
They're
you
actually there,
It's
yeah.
interactive. It's fully immersive.
So cool.
Yeah.
But they do a good job. It's the same thing at the Glendale Gallery, except the lead-in is a little lackluster compared to it's a little. When you go to the one in Downtown Disney, it really makes you feel like you're entering a Star Wars
I just love hearing
reality.
you say Downtown Disney.
Downtown Disney.
Downtown Disney.
Downtown Disney, where Bryce's bananas mushed at the bottom of his back.
I can't wait. I think we're going to go next Monday.
The one thing you gotta,
gotta
obviously
go.
you probably know this already, but Lottie's too little to go.
Oh, that's all
You
right.
have to
She was
be
already
like-
being left behind.
Oh, great.
Her eyes are too small.
It would be great if they had virtual reality for toddlers. Could you imagine? Yeah. Just like them hanging out in like the Muppet Babies nursery.
Dude.
Just dated myself,
I
but
love Muppet Babies.
It's coming back, I think.
I heard that too.
We'll take you when your foot gets better. Promise.
Yeah, I'm in. Yeah,
Promise.
that's I'm crying on the inside. but
You are going to love it.
I can't wait.
We're gonna do a field trip down to Downtown Disney.
I'm in.
Also, where were you this weekend, Kimmy?
I went to Las Vegas.
Oh, nice.
That's it's not virtual reality. It's just reality.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like
Totally.
I mean, it's like the original virtual reality. They built a fake place.
Yeah.
And you get to go hang out there.
That's exactly right. The Apple Sisters did a show. We hosted a show for the Emerge Festival, which is like as far as I understand, it's like celebrating women and sexuality through music
Yeah.
and performance.
And then you got
And
there and
then-
it was just a strip club. You're like, experiment rhino.
Next
What?
up on the stage.
And we flew in on Saturday, and the show was like at 4:30, and we just had no idea because when you do festivals, you kind of just don't find out what you're doing until you're just on stage.
Right. Uh-huh.
So we get on stage around 4:30, and there's like it's our whole set is about sex and sexuality and breaking gender boundaries and stuff.
Hell
And
yeah.
it's Apple Sisters are sort of inspired by the Andrews sisters.
Yeah, like
right?
a
It's
1940s comedy slapstick, and
They would have
show.
fit right in at the Battle of LA.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Recreation we went to
Okay,
last
gotcha.
month.
Yeah, I mean there were so many different
better.
kinds of acts, and it ended with just like I think I've had my fill of seeing butts and things coming out of butts.
Whoa!
You can never
For-
get enough of that.
My lifetime.
What was coming out of all these butts?
Balloons, plugs. Just like,
Oh,
Wild
it was
festival.
music. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was honestly, it was amazing. And we started drinking at noon because we were like,
As you
You're
do.
like, guys, how are we gonna handle looking at all these butts and the stuff that's coming out of it? Booze and mashed bananas.
it was amazing though, and it was like being in VR a little bit. Like we were just like I was dancing in the streets by the end of the day.
nice.
We were done by 7:30.
Wow. Did
In
you
bed
gamble?
by 11.
Are you a gambling man?
Nah.
No?
Nah.
No,
Then we
me
just
neither.
rehearsed in our hotel room in the morning. We just-
So responsible.
I used to love a good mid-afternoon buzz,
Yeah.
especially like in Vegas. You know, that's the place.
we
to
got our
do it.
CVS wine. You know what I mean?
Nice.
Yes, I love
Because
the
that's what you
CVS booze
do.
run in Vegas. I know it's totally what you're talking about.
It was
wow.
debaucherous. It was like just enough debauchery for me.
Oh,
You
that's
know what I
great.
mean?
Because you're a married woman, you're a mother. Do you
Still doesn't mean I don't like to get
That's what
down.
I'm
you know what
saying.
saying? But I also
the
I'm like,
opportunities present themselves
Yeah.
less often than I would imagine. What? Although I have to say I'm not married.
Yeah.
And I don't have kids, and I'm just getting old, and it's really hitting me now. I'm like, I don't like going. I better settle down soon because I'm just losing interest in going out. I'm like turning into like I'm in real danger if I keep up what I'm doing. I'm just gonna become a crusty old barfly. You know,
don't
you hit
think
that
so.
point where you're like, oh, now I'm just like all my friends are married and off, and not all of them, but it's just like. It's a sad look when you're going out by yourself to socialize at like 39. That's not a good. It's no longer. A
I
good
just
look.
like a fine wine, so you can't even get down with like the 20-year-old CVS included.
I get jealous hearing that. I mean, because I don't drink. That sounds like fun. You know, I used to drink a lot, which is why I don't drink. But you miss those days of like all that shenanigans and stuff like that. So at least you still get to go out and socialize and throw a few
it's not the
back.
same. It's not the same.
Oh,
I mean, it
man.
can be fun from time to time, but it's
Sure.
not. It's not the same.
Well, the grass is always greener. I
Yeah,
guess, you know.
exactly. I'm looking over at you, and I'm like, look at that hot stud who doesn't drink anymore. I gotta get me some of that.
Woo, Yeah.
Look at that flat stomach.
Yeah. Yep. Like that guy hasn't seen
Yeah.
Love Handles since he was a baby.
Yeah, but you don't want to be inside this head. You know?
I think I've got a glimpse of it. And it does. It is. Talk about
Yeah.
entering the void.
Yeah. Kimmy, you're going to get a little bit more of that later.
It's so funny. I've just been, so last week we had Scott Adson on, who we both know
Yeah.
from Gravid Water, and perhaps you know him from other avenues. But he was
He was not having it.
He was not.
buying.
if there's an open mind, he was the furthest thing from. I mean,
Right.
he was great. He was a great guest. He was really fun, very challenging. But
And we felt like we had 15 minutes to convince him. Like, yeah, not going to happen.
and there was certain times Bryce was just chiming in. I was on the defensive, and I'm looking over at Bryce. I'm like, if you say one more goddamn thing about plasma balls, I'm gonna. We're trying to reason with this guy.
Was your heart just pounding
That's
in
amazing.
anxiety?
I did get like a little amped up. I was like, because
I thought you were calm, cool, and collected,
on
man.
the outside, because I was like, I gotta host this show, I gotta stay. But like,
True pro.
There's a thing that happens when it's so fucking difficult for me, and boy, am I trigger sensitive. This happened this weekend to a degree, but whenever somebody says, "No, you didn't," I can't. I just like, yes, I did. Yeah. You know what I mean? I was telling him the story about this weird entity that I saw at my window. It's a long story. I don't want to get into it. But he was basically like, no, you didn't see that. And there's just this thing in me that's like, and I don't know, maybe it's because Scott is a little bit older than me, and it's like that old authority figure thing just like triggers in me where I'm like,
Totally.
don't tell me what I did.
me, Dad.
Fuck you, Dad.
Oh my God. I know we have to get on with the show, but I spun so fucking hard on a municipal city worker this week.
Oh, no. You did?
Yeah. So
Let's hear about this.
This is-
Everyone is your
I
dad.
know everyone's my dad except my dad.
I think we've gotten to the heart of it.
All
There we
right.
go.
No, so I took the dog to the beach on Saturday. I had like the best day. I was like super zen and chill, and I come home and I'm like, oh, my car's still parked out on the street. I need to pull it into the driveway. Live in an apartment building where there is constant problems with this unit. I mean, we went without hot water for like over a week last fall. Plumbing sucks. Shit's constantly falling apart. We are over it. Every tenant in the building is about it. It's a great neighborhood and that's why we live there, because it's an awesome neighborhood. But there's just constantly problems. There's this sewage pipe that has broken multiple times and spilled out into the sidewalk. And we have been like, dudes, and I've called my manager about it, the building manager. She's like, it's because everyone's taking growlers and flushing baby wipes. And it's like, first of all, that's disgusting.
Right.
Secondly, and so they just
I've never heard that
They bring
term,
out,
by the
I know, they bring out, I was just like, did you see any growlers come out of anybody's butts this weekend? So anyway, I
yes, I
walk
did.
out to move my car, and there's there's like the city workers with the like truck with the spinning lights are in the sewer. And this dude, I'm like getting my car. He's like, hey, do you live here? And I was like, yeah, I live in this building. And he's like, you guys have a sewage spill leaking out. Come here, I want to show you. This is a health hazard, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he was just doing
Oh
his
my
job.
God.
And I think he was actually trying to be like,
What his job is to
warn
rub your
me.
face in it?
Yeah,
Did you
but
make this?
There's like
Did you
people
do
out
this? You're a
walking
bad
their
dog.
dogs. I'm just like, our shit is literally spilling out in the street. And I was immediately like, you don't need to show me this. I know what's wrong with this building. I am not the manager. He's like, don't get hostile. I'm like, I'm not hostile.
There are plasma balls in and out
Let
of
me
this
tell you
unit.
something about crop circles.
God, listen to me.
I saw an alien gray peering in this window. I know this building has problems. We're sitting on top of a vortex. And then I called my manager. I started screaming at this guy. I was so mad because I was just like, fuck, once again.
You had it.
And it was so funny. I was just like, my neighbors were all out there. And my buddy Kyle, my neighbor Kyle, who's a friend of mine too, before he even moved in, he's just cool as a cucumber. He's like, I'll take a look at it. What's wrong? I was like, God damn it, why can't I be more like him?
He goes, gets a beer with him after. Hey, thanks for showing me that.
Yeah, and
Let's
I
go
think
grab
like
a beer.
afterwards I was like, is this all because of the podcast last week? Am I just quietly raging about everything? I don't know. So yeah, but then I was walking my dog last night and I saw the same sewer workers in my neighborhood, different issue, working around the block, and I was like, hey, sorry I lost my cool the other day. And he's
Oh,
like,
that's good.
No worries, dude.
No worries.
But
Aw.
yeah, the city's
happy
on it.
ending.
The county was out yesterday morning. They're reporting my landlords. You guys tuned in for a podcast about Bigfoot.
Exciting news.
You got the furthest thing from. Okay, well,
They were
Kimmy?
shit monsters from outer space. I don't know.
Chuds. They're called Chuds,
Oh, okay,
cannibalistic
got it.
humanoid underground dwellers. That reminds me, just quick reminder, next week on our Patreon episode, we'll be reviewing the film Communion. Speaking of crazy monster movies from the 80s.
Which
So,
I've never seen. And
I know, we're going to watch it
I'm looking
Me
forward
too.
to it.
Yeah.
weekend
Yeah,
at
we're on.
Riley's house.
Just you guys?
yeah,
Yeah.
just us.
You can come.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
want
if
to?
you
Yeah.
want to
No,
come and be
I-
part of it.
Oh yeah, I'm
Oh, yeah, no,
Are
invited.
you invited?
No, Bryce,
I get to
Bryce
go?
isn't coming.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah. No,
I'm
in. I'll
He's got a broken foot. You want to come? Anyway.
His foot. Yeah, he can't watch movies with his foot.
Yeah. Great. So that's that. Had to get all that off my chest. And now we ask Kimmy Gatewood, what is your paranormal history?
Well, not to Scott Adsit on you guys or anything, but I
Oh, God, don't do this. to
Get
me.
out.
It's become a verb now.
okay. I don't think I've ever had any paranormal experience. I'll say that I think like my mind was just like, anyone is just very impressionable. Like when I was 22, I took a class called The Orientation Reality Based on the Ultimate.
I love this
Yeah.
already.
Which-
Let's get down to it.
So basically, it's a class that based on how you think you're going to die or not die, where you're going to get ultimately
Oh, wow.
is how you live or orient your entire existence. So that could be anything from religion, and you guys must have seen Wild Wild Country. Like,
I'm watching
could
it right now.
Yeah, it's
If you
amazing.
could imagine like someone being a guru who might have just started like, I think this is cool, and then people like, then he suddenly like convinces himself that he's this guru. Anybody. And at one point, I thought, like Catholicism, for instance, everyone's good. They do good things and bad things based on whether they're going to go to heaven or hell, or any kind of religion. So at one point during this class, I was like, existence is meaningless. And I thought that we were all just living on a bug. We were just little tiny like organisms living on a bug. And I thought I was going insane for 3 months of my life.
Okay,
Wow.
quick pause.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Now
was
the bug,
crazy. Yeah.
was the bug like specifically a bug, like a ladybug or something, or was
Praying
it,
mantis.
or was the bug the planet Earth? And you're just thinking in terms of the grand scope of things. We think of Earth as this big planet, but really, if you pull back on all of
Right, if you
creation,
just keep going
it's
back,
kind
back.
of like a tiny little bug, and we're little tiny bugs on the bug.
Yeah, we're like these like gross organisms, and like existence isn't real, and like nobody I'm talking to is really a real person, and
Okay.
like I was like, I don't know what my thoughts mean, like where are they
Wow.
coming
So
from?
were you having like a psychotic
Existential
break?
full existential crisis?
Crisis, yeah.
Wow. How old were you?
19.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's when it happens.
That checks. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so strange. And then I think like, so I have a toddler who's 3. I tell her that Santa Claus is real and that the Easter Bunny is real.
Yeah.
And so her full existence is about doing good or bad based on getting presents at Christmas. So it all really stems back to like what you think your life is going to ultimately be and how you live your life every day. And that kind of, once I got out of my like psychotic spell,
What
I
brought
don't
you
even do
out?
drugs. Like
Wow.
What brought you out? What was- let's-
I had to stop taking the class and stop like back off of philosophy for a little while because I was just like
was
reading
just
a
freaking
lot
you out.
of Nietzsche and stuff.
Yes.
And I had to just stop doing it and like start watching rom-coms and shit and do improv.
Wow.
And do like be in the marching band. I was just like, I just gotta like know that things are real again.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was floating through classes and like just doing things out of just because I had to, out of obligation. But
Right.
there was nothing behind it other than like, is any of this matter? Does any of
I've been there.
you have?
I absolutely have. Yeah, it's a scary ordeal, and it does. It's very similar too. You start getting into, you really start questioning existence and what it means, and it could take you down its own little rabbit hole. And it's spiced with like meaning, and it's spiced with non-meaning, and it's hard to like interpret and actually gain perspective from it. I'm glad you pulled out of it and you're back on planet Earth. But that's crazy when something like that happens.
Yeah. So I mean, I think my entire life view is now peppered with that, knowing that I could convince myself that
Yeah.
is a thing. So it's hard for me to kind of wrap my head around how people believe in ghosts and aliens, other than like, I understand that it is a part of how they function in life to understand something that maybe I don't necessarily comprehend,
What led? Oh man, I have a couple questions. First, what was your adolescence like leading up to that class in that moment? Did you think much about the bigger picture? Did you think much about what reality might be?
No, I don't think I ever had, because I didn't even have like like all my grandparents were alive, so we didn't even have like funerals that we went to when I was younger. Like there was we had like a cat die and like a couple bunnies die, but and I think that's a thing that often triggers people. But I don't think I had a great childhood, like
Religious?
loving
Did
childhood.
you grow up in a religious household?
Catholic, but not
Yeah, well, you
overly.
said that, sorry.
Yeah, not overly like intrusive.
But you've never really had to explore death on like you were never confronted with like having to like really look into what does it mean, what happens after, and
I feel like
Totally.
we are
Yeah.
dangerously close to pushing her back over the edge.
Oh,
No.
right,
Just like-
right.
No.
Staring intensely at you.
It's been 21 years. We're
Yeah.
okay.
God, that
But-
that wild country though. If you haven't seen it, it's a documentary on Netflix. But my wife and I were talking about this. It's like it's like part hypnotist, part like guru. I mean, because you got to have like some like gems to drop, but at the same time, like there's some sort of power conveyance over to him as well. And it's like it's a dangerous thing, and.
You start to think you're king because people are giving you diamond watches and all these fancy cars.
Yeah, it is crazy. Highly recommended viewing though if you haven't seen it.
I'm only biting my tongue for once because I'm like halfway through the first.
Yeah.
I started watching it last night. And
Right.
then I was
Episode 3 really kind of like flips the whole thing. It's
I'm
really exciting.
Fascinated by it. I actually there's another cult that's making the news right now. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've heard about this, the Nexium cult.
Yeah, I just
That's
read
based
about
out
it.
of Albany. This is really wild. If you guys will allow me to go off on a tangent, I don't want to steal Kimmy's spotlight. at all.
No. Well, we don't have a BCC news story.
Well,
so
that's
go
true.
Ahead.
So I actually was almost recruited by that cult about
Whoa.
literally 10 years ago this week.
Wow.
And some of the names, and I'll refrain from using them here, they're very easy to look up in the news. But just to protect our fledgling podcast, some of the names that are in the news regarding these in these articles, I had direct contact with. Now, so crazy story. I had worked on a TV show years ago in Vancouver and had made friends with an actress who worked on a show that shot in Vancouver up there, and we shared the same manager. And I'm no longer with this manager because of this story. So right now, there's all this news coming out about this cult called Nexium, which is supposedly like they got involved with some like sex slave, weird,
Straight up just
shit.
sex
Straight up-
cult is what they called it.
Yeah, it's this guy, Dr. Keith Raniere, who is this like self-help guru guy. And there were Forbes articles about him around this time after this happened. I did research. He had, I think, already been busted for like pyramid schemes and all this stuff.
Right, prior,
And
yeah.
he had partnered up with this woman. Her name escapes me, Claire something. You can look it up, but she was one of the heiresses to the Seagram's gin empire. And she was like
Time and money on her hands.
Dude, and
Oh, yes.
they had this
Absolutely.
giant. Do you remember the story I told you guys about the time I was staying at his giant colonial farmhouse in upstate New York and I
Yeah.
saw the woman in the red dress?
Yes.
That was this incident.
Wow.
So, she had this giant like farm and she had all this money and she was giving all this money to this guy. Basically what happened was my manager at the time had said, hey, I joined this self-help group that I think you'd be really into. And I was like, I'm not into that shit.
Right.
And she told me all about it. She tried to get me to go to like meetings. It sounded like sort of like an upstart. It sounded kind of culty, to be honest. And they were talking about stuff of like claiming to have like cured diabetes just through intense dialogues. And it was one of these things where you go to these seminars for a week, you'd pay thousands of dollars and you would sit in a room and you would talk in a circle and they wouldn't allow you to get up and go pee, that
Right.
kind of stuff. And I was like, well, how did you get into this? And she said, well, this actress that I had known, she got me into it. And I was like, oh, cool. All right. Well, not for me. Plus, it's too expensive, but thanks. And I'm glad this is working for you. But it was sort of like, I don't get this. And it kind of was a huge red flag for me because leading up to that, my manager was just like super professional, like I think Harvard educated, straight laced. So cut to a couple months later, it's April, and I get a call from my manager's office saying, hey, can this actress contact you? She wants to ask you about something. I was like, sure, of course. So she calls me and she's like, oh my God, crazy thing. I'm judging this a cappella festival in upstate New York. Yeah, it gets
Crazy.
fucking crazy.
Wow.
That's
And we
awesome.
need like quote unquote celebrity judges to come and judge the show. And I had done, I do workshop with college students. I go back to like Interlochen Arts Academy where I went to school and I do that kind of stuff. I was like, she's like, it's a free trip to New York. You can hang out in the city as much as you want. We just need you for like a couple days in Albany. I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? Why the hell not? She's like, oh my God, this is awesome. Thank you. So day before I'm flying out, my manager goes, she's like, how are you? I'm like, I'm good. How are you? And she's like, that, and it was called ESP at the time, Executive Success Program. She goes, this is really helping me out. I go, oh, that's good. I'm glad. I'm still glad. And she goes, well, you're going to meet everybody this weekend. And I go, what do you mean? And she goes, well, the Acapella Festival, there people from that are running the Acapella Festival. And it was this nationwide thing where they had invited all of these college kids to come sing and do this thing. And I go, oh, and at the time I was thinking, oh, this is like if somebody from your church has like a side hustle and they're doing so. Oh, okay,
something innocuous like a cappella singing.
Yeah.
Right.
So I get up there and I quickly.
Meanwhile, they drone and it just becomes a hypnotism.
I get up there and I quickly put together that it's this cult, which is what it is, had organized this a cappella festival as a recruitment tool.
Man.
Because if they're like, hey, who can we get who are young and feeling a little disenfranchised and want to be part of a club?
Maybe think they
Acapella
are like live on a bug.
Maybe think they live on a bug, want to sing some songs about it with their other bug friends. And there were other judges that they had brought from like music teachers, some other actors, some people who were just like, theater directors from their smaller towns. And half of us were staying in a hotel in Albany, and half of us were staying at the farmhouse where all of these meetings were going down. Also, sidebar, that fucking house was the most haunted place I've ever been in my goddamn life. Anyway, so day one of the festival, we're just listening. Basically, I have to say, to their credit, I look back and I'm like, I went up there to do what I did, which was judge and coach performers. However, there were...
But like they made you basically endorse their cult.
Yeah. Basically, because they also had me MC the public performances each night. And they were like, you have to be super happy and super energetic. And you have to say, Dr. Keith Raniere welcomes you and blah, blah, blah. So my name is out there.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Associated with this guy somewhere. I'm sure after reading the stories
I just
about
see
this,
like that when the big billboards that like unfold out and it's Michael's picture with his big name.
I'm sure my name is in an FBI file because of this.
Oh, that's amazing.
So then there's something else going on. So then I noticed that the college kids are allowed into private sessions and groups with the members of ESP only, that we, the quote-unquote celebrity judges, were not allowed in. So I go, that's weird. Second, we were not allowed, nor were they allowed to leave the building we were in to go get lunch. And they only served like rice burritos. And so they're totally doing the whole thing where they feed you not enough food.
Right out of the Scientology playbook.
Yeah. And I was like, fuck this. And I started leaving to go get my own lunch. And they were like, what are you doing? You can't leave. I go, I absolutely can leave.
Right.
I was walking around and I would hear people on the phone being like, no, you don't. No, you don't. Because I have the data. I contain the data and you have none of the data. Like they're using technical jargon and all this stuff. And
technical jargon like data.
I should use that on
cult speak. Like
I should have used that on Scott last week. Listen, I contain the data, Scott.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
on
exactly.
crop circles, I contain the data.
You don't contain the data. I contain the data. And the other coaches were coming up to me being like, "What the fuck is going on around here? This is weird."
Right.
And I go, "Well, I think I have an idea of what's happening here." And so we're all like, at some point, we're going to get approached and asked to join this thing. And a couple, there were these dudes. These guys were awesome. They were like the most broy a cappella band. They were all like in a frat. They were like in an ongoing a cappella group from their school called Mixed Nuts.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh my god.
And they did their homework because Saturday night they Googled Keith Raniere and all this shit came up and they were like, what the fuck? What is this? Some kind of cult?
Right.
And they revolted and left. And then all these rumors started spreading throughout the whole thing. And I remember the
awesome.
actress who had invited me, was sitting there crying in the dressing room, being like, "Now I know what Scientologists feel like." And I was like, "Well, look."
Mixed nuts made me cry.
Yeah, I was like, "Look, you are not forthcoming with me about who is behind all of this. So if you don't want to feel like you're part of a secret cult, maybe you should be a little bit more upfront about who's really running the show here." And she's like, "That's a good point." So
Touche, I guess.
Yeah.
A reasonable cult member.
So at the end of the weekend, it was like Sunday evening. We all go to like a cocktail party, and I was like, "Here comes the pitch." And we're all standing around, and this guy's like, "Hey, that's pretty cool. You're like an actor, man. That's really good. That's really good." I mean, this was so insidious that this dude, this Keith Raniere guy, invented his own a cappella group out of the cult to make it look like they were part of a thing, which they were not part of a thing. The whole thing was just a thing to recruit college kids. And
Acapella groups really got to rebrand.
no,
quick.
so this is
We don't want to go into a cult.
This is why we needed Pitch Perfect.
Yeah.
And this guy's like, "Hey man, this is so it's like I'm really impressed by what you do. Like you go to California and you're like pursuing your dreams." And I was like, yeah. And he's like, "I used to be really nervous. I used to really hate myself." And I was like, "Oh man." I'm like, "That sucks." And he goes, "But then Dr. Keith Raniere taught me how to download an operating system through which I could interface with my reality."
Wow.
And I was like, "You know what? That sounds really cool. I'm glad you are happy with yourself, but I'm not interested in this." And he was like, "Okay." And he kind of walked away. And, I took the train back down to New York. I did all this research on, who this guy was, what this was. I was like, this is bullshit. I found out that people who recruit get paid money for bringing in new people. I fired that manager. I stopped talking to those people.
Wow.
And it was just this whole thing. So now 10 years later, there are articles coming out with the people that had tried to invite me into this group, and the FBI has just busted this guy.
Yeah.
And the cult the ESP program has expanded into this cult called NXIVM, which there's supposedly young women being branded with his
I read about
initials
that,
and being
yeah.
used as sex slaves.
Yeah.
This guy was such a douchebag, first of all. I remember I had been doing, emceeing like this stuff. And I remember the times that I saw him walking around, he was arm in arm with two women. He was like wearing kind of like
White robes. Yeah.
And he did not even acknowledge my existence. I was like, "Motherfucker, I'm here as your guest, like saying your name in public. I don't know who you are." And I was like, "You don't even think the people who are," I was like, "This stinks to high hell."
Wow.
That's the bullshit of Guru, though.
Oh yeah, it was the weirdest thing I've ever been. One of the weirdest things I've ever. And I was just like, "Fuck!" I was so pissed that I was like, my name was in the paper in Albany next to this guy's name.
Right.
I was like, "Fuck these people," and I don't even know how bad it's gotten. I mean, I can only surmise from the articles, but it's disgusting, and fuck those guys. Honestly, fuck them.
Well, what they got him down in like Mexico at some 5-star resort, of course. So obviously he's living the lavish life. I mean, oh man, that's just insane.
Yeah.
And he would use I was reading about a couple of those articles, and he would use women to recruit the other women so that it all seemed like on the up and up. Like, hey, we're about empowering women and you should come, like just using all the man, that is shit.
10 years, took a decade to
Wow.
get from that point to this point.
I went to the Church of Scientology in New York because I've always been who isn't fascinated with cults, honestly.
Sure.
They're so fascinating.
It is wild.
It was like the year 2000, so it hadn't quite come out yet, and we were like, this is going to be hilarious. So we went in, we took the personality test. Was like, the questions were like, "Do you read maps?" And we're like, "Yes, of course we read maps." Ooh, they're gonna get us.
Yeah. Have you ever been stressed?
Yeah. Yes.
Sometimes.
And then they took us into a room to watch a movie, and it was just me and this guy, Jake Fleischer. And we watched this movie, and it was like riddled with celebrities. And then at the end, it said, you could leave here, forget all about Scientology. You could also jump off a bridge or blow your brains out, but that would be dumb, wouldn't it?
Wow. Wow.
I found that clip one time on the internet, but I think they might have buried that film. And I just
That's
Same difference.
great. Yeah.
Either or.
Yeah.
and then I at the time, we didn't have cell phones or just cell phones. I might have just gotten a cell phone, but I had the voicemail that you could call in and leave a message, and so they would just call in and leave voicemails because I really.
Right.
Like you kind of want to engage with people, but you just, you know what I mean? Like at some
Wow.
point you're like, all right, I'm too freaked out to
Yeah.
like go with this bit, you know?
Yeah.
Totally.
So where do you stand on reality now? where now? Because
Okay.
this is something that's really currently on my mind.
I think that, we're basically just like watching a plant or an animal. It's just like you live your course of your life and then you die and then you turn into dirt or whatever.
Okay.
And you just fertilize
So you
the earth.
You don't think there's anything outside of the universe having any input on our existence or our reality, whether it's a god or interdimensional creatures or something. I don't know.
That's correct. I don't.
Okay.
I don't. And let's say, if there are aliens or anything outside of the universe, I'm curious to know why they haven't shown up yet. I wouldn't say I would discount the idea, but it's like, I'm sure something's out there because we'd be very selfish motherfuckers to think that nothing
Right,
else exists
right.
beside human beings.
Wait till I get to my data.
Oh no.
I have the data right here. And wait till I get to it.
But,
You think he's joking?
no, I'm sure.
No.
But I do. It's weird because I'm raising a child now, so I'm constantly I have to face what I believe and what I'm going to teach her. So
Yes.
Did
I
you
think-
guys hesitate on? Sorry, I interrupted.
No,
your
it's
thought.
fine. No.
Did you guys hesitate being like, yeah, Santa Claus exists?
No, I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
I think like having this imaginary character teaches you a lot about like just thinking outside yourself and like,
Well, and I was reading about this too, and I'm a big proponent of Santa Claus and the Easter, although it is like when you think about it, you're like, oh, it's fucked up that I'm like, I'm like
Lying.
lying to my kids, But I was reading that once they discover that it doesn't exist, they put that magic into their parents. You know what I mean? They're like, oh my God, look at all they've done to keep that going for me. And
you
like,
just trying to be a magician or a magician.
Well, yeah, but no, but like going through all that love and delivering those special moments around those times.
Well, I
And,
think that was was it Joseph Campbell who said that Santa Claus is a metaphor for a parent's love for a child. That's what it really is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so
Which
you
is
get to
cool.
kind of like, once they kind of figure that out, you get a little bit of extra credit as parents, I think. But yeah, no, it is. I've always had that, like, it is weird that like, because I send my kids to private school just because the public schools out here can be a little scary. But you're like, and I'm not religious in any sense, or nor do I kind of contain any dogma. But it's like, God, I've really got to like, deprogram them in a special way, because they're learning one thing in school, and then I'm lying to them about Santa Claus. It's like no wonder we wake up just like fucked up one day, going, God, what the fuck, It's very true, but so I always just am like, I'm very open with it, like this is what I believe, and sometimes it changes, and I'm not sure how that's going to fuck them up either, but
I know it is a constant battle of like, what are my kids going to go therapy for? Is it
right, no.
religion? Is it I didn't put them enough sports? Is I didn't follow their dream of being a dancer?
You're never going to bat
What is it?
1,000. You're never going to bat 1,000 as a
No.
parent.
It's true.
Though you really, really, really want to, and then
Yeah.
you see like all of a sudden you become a parent, you see everything that your parent did was just like they love you so much,
Yeah.
and like they're just trying like you are.
And I grew up in a tug and pull, like, so my parents divorced when I was pretty young, like 4 or 5, and my mom, who's still like a devout believer and goes to church and Lutheran, my dad just like stout atheist, so it like. As soon as my dad would get us in the summer, he'd be like, okay, what are they teaching you over there?
Oh, no.
And it was like this and that. And he'd be like, okay.
He's like, now let's go out back to the shed. I got some plasma balls I want to show you, Bryce.
But, it forces you to like really like try and, I guess, like stumble through your own way of what your beliefs are, what your non-beliefs are, and you're
What's
forced to
interesting
confront them
too,
all.
I had this conversation with my own therapist last week where
I gotta get one of
we were
those.
talking about.
No, you don't.
You know what? Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. It's fine. At this
I
point,
have a crystal that you could touch.
Yeah,
I'll take that.
It's much cheaper.
Basically, my sessions are now just an expansion of this podcast. From like, I had this crazy dream the other night. We were kind of talking about how certain people's perceptions of reality, and something you said earlier when you were talking about having this sort of like existential crisis. That there is this thing where my therapist, I was explaining the scenario to my therapist, and I've been thinking about this because Scott last week, God, he really got in my head. He was talking about like when I was talking about my ideas of reality is like, well, that's just like, Stan Lee coming up with cosmic rays. You're just making up your version of reality. And I think there's some truth to that, but I also think that a lot of these ideas that I've formed have come from books I've read of people who are thinking about the occult or thinking about the quantum, the theories of higher dimensions or multiple dimensions, like string theory and stuff like this.
Yeah.
So this has sort of been a result of different things that I've read, even religious, stuff about there being some sort of higher dimension outside of
well,
our
and
plane of reality.
science is moving that way. Right now anyway. So
right. I mean, I get nervous because I really am not super well versed in science. So anytime I try to make a scientific argument, I undercut myself. But basically my therapist said, she was like, look, some of these things that you're talking about, they're fine. I'm not worried about them because they're helpful. She was like, if you were bringing in some of these ideas, like, I think the universe is a bug or the world's a bug and we're all little bugs and it's freaking me out, then she would be like, okay, let's work through that and let's talk about why that's...
Kimmy, you were insane.
No.
for a while.
Let's talk about why that's not the case. But I have my own kind of bug theories, I've shared on the show, and she tends to think like, well, it's helping you sort of navigate your way through and work through certain problems, big existential problems I'm talking about here.
Totally. Life was meaningless for a while.
Right. And she's like, this kind of stuff gives your life meaning. And as long as it's that, then it's okay to kind of go. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of like people who have certain religious beliefs. It helps them kind of get through their
It's an anchor.
existence.
It can be an anchor, sure.
It's an anchor, and mine is sort of a...
How you live your life based on the ultimate...
Right. And I guess mine is... Exactly. And I guess mine is sort of a continuing, evolving search for the meaning of life in the context of a larger reality, of which I tend to believe we have a very narrow window into. And that's kind of what drives me. And the more that window opens up to bigger possibilities, that gets me excited, and that sort of steers me clear of destructive thoughts and feeling down and depressed. I get excited. I'm sorry this is turning into a therapy session, but
the unexamined life is not a life worth living. I think we all need to at least...
Arnold Schwarzenegger said that.
That's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That's right.
Yeah, but no, you have to
We're on T2 time. That was the good times.
Yeah.
Those are the good times.
I think if you don't question what you believe, like if it's just your parents' ideas or dogma or religion or philosophy, whatever, then I don't, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. I think it's important to come up with your own mythology, if that's what a word you want to use, or at least examine why you believe what you believe.
I say personal mythology.
I think it's healthy.
I think we all, to a degree, carry around and subscribe to a level of personal mythology. Some of them are a little bit more off the rack than others.
Sure.
Like I'm going to take Presbyterianism, and I'm going to apply that to my life.
Yes,
that is
because it's important also for people to feel like they belong somewhere.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
That's like the fine line of cult and religion.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's true. But I think it comes to a point of how much damage is it causing is if you are freaking out because your model of the universe is spiraling out of control and it leads to a psychotic break. Okay, we need to re-examine your thought process here. I don't know. I'm getting into weird territory.
No, not at all.
No, because even the very real issue of abortion and women's reproductive, all that stuff is based primarily on people's religious beliefs. So
Yeah.
it's like it is important to have these existential conversations because
it shapes our actual reality.
like our society,
Yeah.
truly,
Yeah.
you know. So it's like our society is literally like put a hard line right down the middle. You're on this side or you're this side, you know.
No.
Even like with gay marriage, it was like this side or this side. It was all religious beliefs, your orientation to the ultimate, blah blah blah. You know.
Well, and I think it's messed up when it comes with like an ultimate damning device, like at the end of it. Like, well, if that's what you don't believe, then unfortunately you're going to burn eternally in hell.
Right.
And that's devastating. And
Yeah.
like going back to when I was a kid, it's like my one thing that I always appreciate and love my dad for being like is he really put it to me in layman's terms. He was just like because I remember I was like 5 years old and I had come out to him and I was just like bawling, because I was like, and I sat on his lap and he's like, "What's wrong, Bryce?" And I was like, I don't want you to go to hell,
Right.
I love you, and I just can't imagine you like spending eternity in hellfire. And he basically was like, "Okay, let's look at that for a second." He's like, "God's a good guy, right?" He's like, and I'm like, yeah, he's like, and what about me? Am I a pretty good guy? And I was like, "Well, of course, I love you." And he's like, "Listen, if you were God, would you send me to hell to burn for eternity?" And I was like, and I had to thought about that. If I was God, would I send you to? And I was like, no, I wouldn't. So it's like, I immediately, not knowing
that was
it-
a nail biter.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I would, if you don't believe. No, but what I didn't realize what happened there was I took the power back from that dogma that had been ingrained in me, and it connected to me on a personal, like on a level, like, and I was like, and from there it just kind of broke the boundaries down for me to start examining, what I was like so believing in, and but then I'd go back and but so
play the role of church kid.
yeah,
Yeah.
so then began the tug of war for me, but yeah, it's like it can be damning when when there's consequences to your belief, and so I love like your belief, dust in the wind. That's what my dad used to call it because he loved that song. All we are is dust in the wind.
Yeah, again, some philosophies
Yeah.
are a little more off the rack than others.
Absolutely, and his philosophy didn't come with a consequence at the end, and so I've always steered that way. That like whatever is out there or whatever is in here, you know what I mean. It just is what it is, and there's not going to be some like eternal consequence.
Well, you know
so
what
to
Scott
speak.
Adsit would say. God's just a weather balloon anyway.
Right? Swamp gas. It's just swamp gas.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to share our high strangeness story of the week.
Awesome. Can't wait. My report has banana splooge on top of it, so you'll have to forgive that because I will be passing out some pictures.
All right.
Every other word is banana. Plasma ball banana.
Plasma ball
God
banana.
damn it.
Honestly,
Plasma banana.
how many times do you bring up plasma balls in this report?
Well, even the skeptics who the skeptical hoaxers who do crop circles, they report seeing balls of light as well, and they become confounded as well.
I've seen the videos.
Yeah,
they're pretty.
there's
they're
some
pretty cool.
amazing videos out there.
All right, so high strangeness time.
Yes, high strangeness time, and I guess that Scott episode really affected me too because I wanted to pick up this week sort of on crop circles,
Right where you left off.
right where I left off, Scott.
Well, my goal with this show is just to be one kind of continuous conversation. So I
but
think that's
you
great.
know what? I love the skeptical version too because that's usually where I start my research, and I think it is a great way. Anyway, so my story of high strangeness is called the Arecibo Message and the Chilbolton Response. Have you ever heard of this, Mike?
I have never heard two of those words.
Okay, great. Then you're going to love this. So, on November 16th, 1974, famed astronomer Carl Sagan, along with Frank Drake, the founder of SETI, decided they were going to send ET a greeting card, carrying, along with some highs and hellos, some basic information about humanity and Earth. Simply known as the Arecibo Message, named after the world's largest radio telescope in which it was sent, The message was blasted into space via radio waves at a special ceremony to celebrate the remodeling of the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico.
Of which 4 people attended.
Yeah. Do you know that gigantic satellite dish you saw in the Bond movie GoldenEye, where he's running around? It's that huge satellite dish. That's the one.
Kimmy, just say yes.
Just nod your head, Kimmy.
Gold finger.
That's it. The most powerful broadcast ever deliberately beamed out into space. The signal was 1,000,000 times stronger than the typical TV transmission. It consisted of 1,679 pulses of binary code. Binary code is zeros and ones, which make a complex message. It took
Don't look at me when you say that.
Yeah,
I know.
Did you just mansplain binary code to us?
Sorry. Listen, I have the data right here. It took a little under 3 minutes to transmit and was transmitted on a frequency of 2380 megahertz. That's for you, Riley.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The Arecibo
Engineer boner.
The Arecibo message was directed at a neighborhood star cluster approximately 25,000 light years away, known as M13 in the constellation Hercules. It's a large and close collection of stars. And
The gayest constellation of all.
Well, and since the satellite is actually fixed in the ground, they really just had to go with what was going to be in space at that time. So that was the star cluster that they chose. It was going to match with the date of the ceremony.
Whatever, fucking star cluster.
Just
shoot your message
What's up
there.
in the sky right now?
Aim for the one that's super ripped with the six-pack.
M13.
He's hot. He's really hot.
So I'll pass you a picture here of the Arecibo message because it also...
It looks like a Donkey Kong.
It sure
Yes.
does.
So the binary pictorial message,
The Donkey
it's
Kong map.
73 rows by 23 columns
That's
depicted.
a dick. That's a building.
Now all that
person.
all that has information is depicted our planet's location in the solar system, the core principles of our math and science, and the NASA antenna at the bottom used to transmit the signal in the hopes that it would be interpreted by extraterrestrial intelligence.
They could be like, these motherfuckers are still operating on like 4-bit technology.
I know.
Fuck them. We're not coming to this planet.
You know, for the listeners who are unable to Google it, it basically looks like a rectangular punch card with some old school boxed
It's like
computer graphics. on
Atari
it.
graphics.
Yes, but it also included details about human beings, such as our physical appearance and DNA code.
Hot.
Did this
We are
coincide with
orange, blocky people with no genitalia.
Did this coincide with the Golden Record? And that was
So
shot
that's a
out in
different
space?
thing altogether. Golden Record was in 1972, and which actually, once they launched, I think it was called the Dradex code or something. I'm getting that wrong. But you're talking about a gold disc that they sent on the on 2 satellites that contained some vital information
And it had
about
like the Vitruvian Man on there.
Yes,
as well,
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And
Because Carl Sagan was involved with that pretty heavily
he
too.
was,
right?
and
Yeah.
that actually once they sent that gold one out into space is when kind of crop circles started appearing. But anyway, getting back to the Arecibo message.
Don't get Bryce off on a tangent.
Sorry, my
God
bad.
damn it, Riley. Now, 27 years later, on August 19th, 2001,
Wow signal?
ET emailed back. No, not the wow signal, something different. When 2 separate crop patterns appeared in a field right next to Britain's largest telescope, the Chilbolton Observatory, home to the world's largest fully steerable meteorological radar. Now, this holler back became known as the Arecibo or Chilbolton response. And I'll show you a picture of it right here. It came basically with 2 crop circles, and they're not circles. This is a,
like
this
crop
is a
designs.
crop designs. This is a first of its kind, arriving much earlier than anticipated. Considering it takes 25,000 years for a radio wave to reach M13, it seems as if some non-human entities intercepted the message early and decided to write back. Now, the message describes a different solar system, and I'll show you, this is their message. It actually came in the same type of form using binary with a pictorial graph, 73 rows by 23 columns. Look at the little alien guy as opposed to our guy. The message describes, the message describes a different solar system. Now, but you have to understand what's in that message is 2 separate types of information. There's the binary code splayed out in a way that can also formulate into a pictorial graph like that. I know it looks a little archaic, but there's actually a lot of complex information within that message. So the message describes a different solar system, non-human DNA, included an extra strand, and a microwave antenna instead of the radio wave you see at the bottom of that first one. Now, here is a year earlier at Chilbolton, this crop circle showed up. And if you look on the
A year earlier?
1 year earlier, prior to 2001, so if you look on the Arecibo response,
Oh, right.
that's a depiction of what they're using to send information.
So this thing looks like a sort of circular fractal pattern.
Yes,
and
well,
they're saying this is a type of
So that's a microwave
that they're sending
microwave
signals across.
as opposed to our standard radio, you know? So that basically they're saying in their message, hey, you guys are using radio waves, which is still a little outdated.
I use a microwave
we
for
use
Tostitos
a
pizza roll.
microwave. Yes.
Why do aliens just pick crops or like corn to talk?
We'll talk
Okay,
about that.
okay,
We'll
okay.
get there.
Okay.
Now the face that you see on that one, that crop
Other
circle
one?
actually appeared on the 13th of August,
first
which
one.
was 6 days. No, yeah, right, that one.
This face looks like you know those old, like when you would go to Sharper Image or Spencer Gifts, and they had those like metal needle
nails.
things that
Yeah.
you would put your face in, and it would pop
Here's
out.
a
and give
here's
you
a close up.
three-dimensional-
Here's a
100%.
close up of it. Now, the face that you see there actually appeared on the 13th of August, 6 days before the rectangular response, and represented a never before seen technique in crop circle generation. So this was literally a first of its kind. Now, if it was hoaxers, like the mainstream media would have us believe, not bad for a first attempt, you know? And staring at the face, one can't help but to receive an eerie message that, hey, we are here, we can see you, we are watching you.
That's not where I thought that phrase was going.
Also in the response, as you'll see them side by side, which was painstakingly done, was a few key and some would say meaningful differences, such as the atomic number for life is almost the same, except instead of solely carbon-based life forms, silicon seems to play a major role. The structure of their DNA has been altered, indicating an additional strand to our own. And the graphic pectoral, the pictorial of the sender indicates a larger head as well as more pronounced eyes. An average height of the intended sendee is measures out to about 3.5 feet tall. The population is different. The intended
Did
sender
you
is
just say measure?
measure.
Are you my grandma from Wisconsin?
Now that's measured out to about 3.5 feet tall. And well, they state on their message that they have a population of around 12.7 billion. And that it takes place, that they live on also about 3 planets in their 9-planet solar system. Also, the communication device has been changed, which we talked about, is to that of a microwave radio transmitter. And yeah, so that's basically the Arecibo Chilbolton response.
So they send this 8-bit Atari-looking radio signal out.
Yes.
And then how many years later? It was
27 years
27
later.
years
yeah.
later, this-
So in 2001, yeah.
these
in
crop
a-
formations show up.
Yes, and in a different country, of course. These ones show up at the Chilbolton Observatory, which is Britain's largest steerable radio antenna.
Now, is there a theory as to why it showed up there? Is it because of the crops were nearby and they could...
Yeah, well, because in Puerto Rico, where they sent the Arecibo message, there's really no crop fields or fields of wheat, and crop circles usually only show up around, through there's a crop season, which these things usually pop up, and England being the highest amount of where they get their crop circles. Although now, crop circles are showing up. They've shown up in over 70 countries. Worldwide, and there's thousands of them. But yeah, so this one appeared right next to Britain's largest observatory. And it's funny enough, the guy who sent the message, they interviewed him. His name was Frank Drake. Frank Drake is the guy that came up with the actual famous Drake equation, which is it was an
Really hot R&B number?
Yeah, it's a really hot R&B
Canada.
number. The Frank Drake equation is an equation used to determine how many habitable planets there would be in the Milky Way galaxy using a simple mathematical equation. So they actually, which what I thought was interesting, they come and talk to this guy and they say, hey, have you seen this, your Arecibo response? And he immediately kind of goes, oh, tiddlywinks, He's like, why would they send it right next to our radio observatory when they would just, they could just walk up and
beam it into the...
They just beam it in, And, well, I say that's not how crop circles work. Mr. Frank Drake.
This time on Crop Circle
But
Race.
So
It's like RuPaul's Drag Race
I
except
know.
with crop circles.
well, 1 year
Bryce
later.
Johnson's crop circle race.
I would watch that show.
I know. Thank you, Riley. I appreciate that. Well, 1 year later, another crop formation appeared in Chilbolton, again with a strange alien face and a disc with binary
Oh,
code
I've
on
seen
it.
this one.
Similar, and I'll passing pictures here. If you guys are at home listening to this, Google Arecibo message,
We'll put this in the show notes.
Arecibo or Chilbolton response, and you'll get all kinds of cool stuff. But so a year later, this one came up with an alien face and a disc with binary coding on it, similar to the 2001 crop circle. And this one, too, was made of pixels. Now, the binary message was decoded to be found as a message from the creators of the crop circle. The decoded message read, "Beware of the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. There is good out there. We oppose deception, conduit closing." And then there's a bell sound. Bing! Very weird. What's also interesting to note is that in and around this time, a top secret NSA report was uncovered that was chillingly titled "The Key to the Extraterrestrial Messages." Now, this document reveals that they have received a series of 29 different messages from outer space that also appear to be in some binary form. And it begs the question, are we being communicated with?
Wait, is that document declassified or was it leaked?
It was
or-
declassified through the Freedom of Information Act, yes.
I haven't heard about that.
And anyway, so that got a lot of hot topic. But so basically, that's it. That's the story of High Strangers of the Arecibo message and the Chilbolton response.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right, when we come back, we're going to ask our guest, Kimmy, what the hell was that?
What the hell was that, Kimmy? Hey guys, Bryce Johnson here. Each week we post exclusive photos with our guests and great visual aids on Instagram at Bigfoot Collectors Club and on Facebook and Twitter at Bigfoot_C Club. Check them out. You don't want to miss them. Thanks for listening.
And we're back.
And we're back.
And it's time for what the hell was that?
Kimmy, what the hell was that?
The areola.
No, the areola message.
The nipple message.
Alien
From outer
nip slip.
space.
alien nip slip.
UFO malfunction.
Extraterrestrial wardrobe malfunction of
Yeah.
2001.
I mean, God damn it. I don't know. I do want to know why aliens would pick crop circles. You guys have already covered this in your past.
No,
No,
not really. This
we've
is
not talked about
the
crop
first
circles
time
at all.
we've kind of
Just because it seems so silly. It's like why isn't like a building, like why don't they just like leave messages within cities,
No, totally, and it's a great question. The crop circle phenomenon is relatively new and has only started around the 70s and the 80s is really when it started to pick up.
However, one would argue that there was one that took place in England in the 1600s.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the mowing devil?
The mowing devil, yeah. So this came out in a pamphlet of like 1678 or something like that. And back then they really couldn't make heads or tails of it. Now we use the common explanation of like, aliens or energy vortexes or stuff like that.
Yeah, there was a farmer
every
in,
day.
It's just
Hertfordshire.
every day.
Normal stuff.
It's normal stuff.
There was a farmer, I'm just pulling this off Wikipedia now,
Sure.
in Hertfordshire in 1678 who refused to pay the price demanded by a laborer to mow his field. So he swore he'd rather the devil do it. Mm-hmm. And then that night he claimed to have seen flames or lights in his field, and when he came
Which
out,
is
he
common,
found
yeah.
it perfectly mowed.
Right. And so that was before
And
the
the
big
image
kind of
shows, in the woodcut, shows a devil mowing the field in a crop circle that's very
Right.
similar to what you see.
So that's
today.
kind of the oldest crop circle story, but these things really took off in the 80s and 90s and still continue on to this day. And the interesting thing about crop circles is they're related to, and you ask why they're not on buildings and stuff, but they do it in these wheat fields, because a lot of people equate it to sort of the feminine Gaia principle. This is, using wheat, using fields of grain and stuff like that, which is associated with, kind of feminine archetypes and birth and stuff like that. And
But why would aliens know about that? Like, what if they don't have a gender or multiple genders?
The jury,
you know what I
the
mean?
jury is out on what creates this thing. There's
Or
two,
maybe they have a higher understanding of planetary systems, of planets themselves, of Earth energies.
they're very
It's
geometrical.
a little woo-woo.
Yeah, they're very geometrical and using, different kind. And as the years go on, they get more complex and more complicated.
We know for a fact that some of these crop circles have been faked. There were those two guys, Dave and something.
Yeah,
who were English guys who would walk around with planks.
Bauer and
flatten
Chorley.
stuff.
Yeah, in 1991, self-professed pranksters Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley made headlines
Doug and
claiming
Dave.
it was they who started the phenomenon in 1978 with the use of simple tools consisting of plank of wood, rope, and a baseball cap fitted with a loop of wire to help them walk in a straight line. But listen, for them to take credit of all the crop circles that show up around the world is ridiculous. And the scientists that go in and actually research these things, they find all kinds of scientific anomalies, including tiny iron particulates. That are like little balls of spheres toppled on top of each other.
Well, I know that in some crop circles they've found too where the grain is bent at 90 degrees angle and
they call it the node.
They're ballooned into nodes where they're turned as almost an intense heat had melted and expanded the crops to lay flat.
Not only that, they're electrostatistically charged, the ones that they can prove to be not hoaxed. And there's just there's a great story of go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, for me, I don't know what's up with crop circles. I believe that crop circles are like a lot of other things that are in this field, Bigfoot, UFO. I think there are a lot of hoaxes out there. And then I think there's some genuine cases where these things have appeared. And I'll say this. If they're all man-made, I don't know how the fuck some artist has been able to stomp some of these patterns out without an aerial view, just marching around at night in a crop field. I know.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, no one's been caught these things appear overnight and they're so geometrically perfect.
Yeah.
I would just be fascinated to go some of these, like that one with the alien face. How the hell did they do that?
Yeah. Well, that's just the thing. Whether they're man-made or they're not, they're incredible in their own right.
And they talk about some of these stuff. They can't find tracks leading
that's the
from
thing.
the road into as if no one has walked in.
I just imagine there's some like Russian scientist up in a satellite who's just like.
Yeah, well, that's one. That's one of the theories is some black tech, that governments are using to put information out there that they want.
It's
so
weird.
there's all kinds of theories.
That's a little conspiracy theorist.
Sure,
but I'm into it.
There's a bunch of them.
I think that maybe one could argue, and this is an elementary argument, that the reason these show up in crop fields is also to sort of show people like, hey, you can only really see this from above, from the sky, as if something high up has been, beaming these patterns in.
It's just so polite, though.
I know. I know. It's weird.
It's like you would think that it would be closer to humanity or like it just seems weird that they keep bugging farmers and destroying their shit.
Well, most of them the majority of them took place in Wiltshire, right around Stonehenge, and a lot of those burial mounds are where they show up. So some of them, they like to relate it to sacred grounds or places with a lot of mystical energy.
There might be something more supernatural at work with these things too. These may not be aliens that we think of as ET from another planet. They might be. I'm just mowing devil's advocate here.
Sure, yes.
They might just be entities that are trying to break through and communicate with us in ways that they
from below the surface.
I don't know.
On that note, and I'm not trying to go too Scott on you guys here, but that alien selfie crop circle, I have a really hard time getting
it.
On
Looks
board.
like a computer printout.
It looks like a bitmap printer, and I've read about this one because it fascinated me, and I thought this one was pretty thoroughly debunked.
Well, and if you look at the one that the Chilbolton response, which I think is the more genuine case, that the faces look different. The face in that one that came with the Chilbolton response, it almost looks human, and it's strange. It doesn't sort of have an age or a gender to it. Where this one is the the typical alien gray.
Right. Did you read in your research? Did you encounter any of the debunking of this particular?
Bryce does not look at those.
Nobody took claim over that one.
No one did.
And so it's really kind of left to to not really know. But it does beg the question: hey, if they can do binary code on this one and it was hoax, then certainly they could do a binary code on that one.
I just would be fascinated. Look, either way, these things are pretty.
They're incredible.
I love
they're
crop
incredible.
circles.
And
it's just this one in particular.
I don't think that these are created just by people stomping around with planks of woods and rope. All of them.
Yeah. I don't either.
So I know that there's some theories. There's a video. I'm going to find it and post it. There's one of a couple. I think it was a couple filming this glowing orb swooping down around a
Plasma balls.
Plasma ball. I said it first.
There it is.
And then a crop circle formed there the next day.
Well, that's the really interesting thing too. And what I found interesting in reading about this
Drones.
stuff is drones.
Drones.
These will actually play with a lot of like the researchers themselves. There seems to be a direct connection. Colin Andrews is one of the most leading researchers on this, and he just sort of was driving his car and stumbled across one, walked in, and that started like a 20-year investigative sort of journey with him. And he would fly over. He found a pilot who would who would fly over these things, and they remember saying they were getting these Celtic glyphs, Celtic crosses and stuff. And, the pilot said, wouldn't it be great if they could just, all of these put into one crop circle? And the next day, that very crop circle showed up almost as if the entity, and in the same place that they flew over, almost as if the entity had kind of like heard them discuss what they wanted. And so it was able to play with them directly and provide that crop glyph,
This is classic cosmic trickster.
Yeah, totally.
But they took like somebody beaming into Hercules' nutsack like to get a response, and yet people can just chat on a plane and then get a fucking crop circle. That seems
It's
like
weird.
absurd.
No,
This is why it's
weird.
called high
Strong point.
strangeness.
Yeah, and one another part of high strangeness was, which what I think is very interesting about the crop circle, what they call the balls of light. So in and around these crop circles, and you can look these up on the internet.
That's what I was talking
There's some
about.
great videos of actual little floating.
Why are you talking about this as if I just did not mention
Well,
it
because
2 minutes ago?
there's one that's been proven fake, and
Oh.
it's the one there were like two ones, and you see them make a crop
Oh.
circle.
Oh, yeah.
And then they
that
kiss.
one has been properly debunked, but. There's about 5 or 10 really good balls of light video, and they're usually like orange, and they hang around these crop circles and they fly. And I was reading about even these two college hoaxsters who were out there doing their thing. They went on record to say that we've witnessed these things too, and almost confounding them even further.
There's also been research where they find trace radiation in the crop circles.
The trace
things like that, too, which
they
is
bring out
interesting.
scientific instruments to the ones that they feel are like genuine. They bring out scientific instruments and they find that they're electrostatistically charged. There's leftover radiation. Like I said, little iron sphere balls are left when they look through them at a microscope. These little like spheres stacked on top of each other, almost as if they're using some sort of like iron radiation too, or it's who knows? But we know that humans
who
can make
knows?
them. Who?
Kimmy.
Kimmy?
So Kimmy,
Yeah.
if you were just to take a look at this stuff and the very little look, we're just telling one story here. What's your take on this? What do you think this is? Do you think this is people making this stuff?
I don't know.
Or do you think there's a larger mystery
It
here?
seems. I mean, it does. They are so gorgeous that it does beg like what would compel someone to do something like that. But
Yeah.
I just don't see any meaning in them, to be honest with you. And I don't know. It all seems like too convenient and not convenient enough.
Yeah.
But people thought that the sun was just like a god, and then until we found out it was just like a ball of fire that's eventually going to die out. So like, who knows? Maybe we'll just find out that this is just some weird the earth crying out like, please, I'm going to die soon.
Yeah,
you
well,
know?
that's one of the theories that is actually Gaia as a sort of a spiritual body entity that's like giving these geometrical images to say the planet's suffering is too much, and here's a message and something like that.
I can't make heads or tails of this stuff. I really can't. I tend to come down on the they're probably mostly man-made, but then again, if that's true, I'm fascinated by that, and I wish that if I would consider this is like a magic trick. So I'd like to. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, if they're all man-made, I want to see some of these people who make them show us how they do it at night on this grand scale, and then because some of these, when you go on the ground level, it's like. It doesn't look like it's like you're so close to the pattern. It doesn't look like it's actually creating anything until you pull up into the sky.
But that's like those photos that are created with photos,
Well, I know. So I'm wondering how people do that on that large scale. Like what material are they
like
bringing
Mount
in to map
Rushmore.
it out?
It was done without computers and shit. Like
I know.
People can figure that out. So it's not like it can definitely be done by humans. For sure.
Well, that's what makes that one even more confounding. Is this is the first time a glyph, like if you call it a crop glyph like that, showed up, and there's over 700 right angles in that one particularly. I mean, and for somebody to for a team of people to do this that perfectly on the first try, it just begs the question, hey, what's happening? A current trend in crop circles seems to be for the use of advertisement, which is sort of a new trend. A lot of companies are hiring these hoaxsters to go out and put their their beer insignia in the
I want to see photos of those and how well detailed they are.
Yeah. But anyway, so that is this high strangeness story of the Arecibo message, which is a real thing, and the Chilbolton response, which came back, which we're still unsure about. But nonetheless, like you say, Mike, it is certainly amazing to look at, and it is an incredible accomplishment, whether it was E.T. or two pranksters with a board and string.
Bunch of dudes.
Bunch of fucking dudes.
All right. Well, there you have it. Come to your own conclusions, everyone. Yeah. And please tune in next week.
Yes.
Don't give up on us yet.
No.
Hey, I think I did a great job, you
Kimmy,
motherfucker.
Oh, you do. You were phenomenal.
You're great.
It's me and Mike.
I'm having an existential crisis now. Kimmy, you were fantastic. Thank you really so much for joining us today. We love you. Where can people find your work? Do you have anything coming up that you'd like to plug?
Yes, so I have a film called Control on Seed and Spark you can watch.
Awesome.
It's a short film about a woman's suicide note that becomes a suicide binder, speaking of existential crises.
Oh, wow.
Michael is actually going to be in some upcoming shorts with Planned Parenthood Refinery 29 we have with Rachel Bloom.
Great.
Cool.
A previous guest on the show as well.
Yes, and the Apple Sisters are playing at the UCB Sunset, 7 p.m. April 21st.
Oh, perfect. This is just in time for this. It'll come out on the 18th.
Perfect.
So if you're listening and if you're in the LA area, come this weekend to see the Apple Sisters.
That's great.
Bryce, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, speaking of UCB Sunset, I'm heading over there actually later today to do another Buddies podcast, So LA, by Charlie Sanders and his wife Camille. They do a podcast on things So LA. So
Cool.
I'll be doing that.
We did improv together in the year 2000.
Oh, is that right?
We've known each other for a long time.
He's the
So
best.
LA.
Love
That
that
is
guy.
But so LA, we met in New York. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's really LA.
That's very
Riley, you guys have a show coming up on April 23rd, I believe.
That's true, and we're actually doing a little run up California. This is my band Spindrift we're referring to. We're playing in LA on the 23rd at Harvard and Stone. We'll also be up in the Bay Area before that, playing shows from like 4:18 to 4:23. I think there's 6 shows. So if you're in on the West Coast, you want to listen to some psychedelic Western music.
Yeah, or check them out on Spotify or any other music venues because I've done it. Their music is dope.
Yeah, it's
Thanks,
pretty great.
Bryce.
Yeah, it's
and
very cool.
this month, sometime airing around this episode, I'm on an episode of NCIS LA.
Oh yeah,
So
great.
if you're home on a Sunday night and watching network TV,
Take the money. I don't know where it is.
pretty much exactly my performance. I get to do some goofy stuff in this one. So
that's awesome.
Check it out. But thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers. And I'm trying to remember if there's anything else to plug.
Well, let's not leave out all the other listeners too who
I
are
said
not
thank
Patreon.
you,
Thank
and
you
then
for
also,
just
of
all
course,
of them.
all of our
Yeah,
listeners.
Absolutely.
And
Where can they find you on social media?
Well, we're at Bigfoot Collectors Club on Instagram, Bigfoot
Yeah.
Collectors Club on Facebook. We're at Bigfoot_C Club on Twitter because Bryce didn't know what he was doing when he signed up for that.
They don't. They don't let you have that big enough of a.
I know, it's
of
true.
A name.
you know what? At Kimmy Gatewood is going to follow you
Yeah.
on all of those
Oh, that's
platforms.
nice.
great. We love that. And
We're
guess
gonna
what? We'll
follow
be
that
following you back. You can also find us at McMills, at Trashbag #. That's Riley. Are you coming back with your own Riley Bray Or are you still
Oh no,
trash bag hashtag?
I'm doing a peace drone one too for the ambient music, but
Oh, cool.
Awesome.
I'm really committed to the pictures of garbage.
Okay.
So.
And Mr. Bryce Johnson
Yes.
and Bryce O. Johnson
Nice.
on Twitter, I believe.
Yeah, well done.
Guys, thank you so much. We'll be back next week with an all-new episode of Bigfoot Collectors Club. And you can also check out right now on our Patreon the Communion episode. So that'll be up there where we're talking about the film Communion for pledges of $5. And
Cool.
you can get access to all of our bonus materials. Thank
Can't
you
wait
so
to
much.
see that.
Yeah.
All right, man.
We love you guys.
Yes.
Bye guys.
It's really
Bye.
this is a real awkward one.
Just kind of
Awkward back out.
back out of the room.
Oh no, acapella. Get me out of here.
Oh, please don't kill me, former acapella cult members. Thank you. Bigfoot Collectors Club is produced by Riley Bray, and our music is by Suneaters from the song Come Alone, courtesy of Lotuspool Records. You can find us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher Radio, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please rate and review the show. It helps us get it out to more people and more believers like you.